the UFC insider himself. Dizz of @Talk MMA joined us on the line as he does before almost every UFC pay-per-view event. If you want to know what's going to happen with the fights before it happens, you want to follow him @Talk MMA. My friend Dizz, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How's everybody at ESPN in South Jersey?
We're doing well, man. So you look ahead to this.
How are you doing? I've been seeing the Instagram photos, man. You've been bulking up. What's going on, Mr. Fitness?
You know, all you guys, you and Dashawn do the same thing to me. Every time I talk to you guys, at least once a week, it's your arms, it's like, I don't know what to say to you guys.
What are you weighing in at now? About 230, like solid?
No, I'm not 230. No, I'm hanging around 212 right now.
212? You and I are a much different 212 at this moment.
Dashawn just pointing at me. He's nodding his head. All right, so this card tonight, aside from the obvious, which is the title fight, you obviously have Gadea versus Kowalkiewicz. You have a lot of interesting fights, but starting with the title fight, we heard from Max Holloway earlier, and he was talking about things like he wants the best Jose Aldo. He doesn't want the Jose Aldo that lost to McGregor in 18 seconds. He doesn't want the Aldo that drags out a fight. He wants the best Aldo to ever walk into the cage so that when he beats him, no one can say anything. So do you think we will see the best Jose Aldo tonight versus Max Holloway?
He wants the Frankie Edgar UFC 200 Jose Aldo is what Max Holloway is asking for. And I think that if I were him, I'd actually want the WEC 48 Uriah Faber Jose Aldo, the guy who was beating your legs up with, I don't even remember how many kicks that was, but man, what was that, like 56-some kicks Uriah Faber took?
I think it was like he attempted 60 and he landed like 48 of them or something like that.
It was ridiculous, and Uriah Faber had to be carried out of the cage because he could not walk. Yeah, in fact, in between rounds 3 and 4, he had to be carried back to his corner just to preserve his legs, and somehow that guy was able to make it through all 5 rounds. But yeah, I could absolutely see where Max Holloway's coming from. He wants the best. The guy is on. Max Holloway's on a 10-fight tear. He's going through names like Cub Swanson, of all guys, Jeremy Stevens, who I agree with him, is probably the hardest 145-pounder in the featherweight division. And to beat Anthony Pettis by body kicks and punches is unreal. Even though allegedly, Pettis had a bad weight cut, but he also had some things going on in his life with the car, with his cars being set on fire by some random kids in the neighborhood. This is absolutely a good matchup. I was a little confused about being on today because looking at the rest of the card, I was thinking, well, why am I coming on to ESPN for a FS1 card? Oh, that's because it is a pay-per-view card. All right. Jose Aldo, take away the corner punch. Take away the 13-second punch from Conor McGregor. We're still sitting here talking about an undefeated champion for the last 10 to 11 years. So I don't think that Conor McGregor's knocking out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds at UFC 194 is Jose Aldo's legacy, but it is a very dark cloud over his head. If Max Holloway beats him tonight, that the cloud just gets darker. It just gets much darker for Jose Aldo, and you kind of, even beating Frankie Edgar, who's a different animal, a much different animal than Max Holloway, you kind of have to wonder, are we going to be looking tonight at a Jose Aldo who makes the UFC, the media, and fans say, okay, so which Jose Aldo is going to show up tonight, for the rest of his career?
Dizz, this is Dashawn. Max Holloway has lost his last.
Dashawn, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Dizz, how you doing?
Hey, it's another day in paradise.
Always. Max Holloway has lost his last fight, the same as Jose Aldo. What can we learn from their similar opponent, McGregor?
Well, we also have to look at Conor McGregor was still sharpening himself up. When Max Holloway fought Conor McGregor, I believe Conor McGregor, it was only Conor's. I'm looking at.
I believe it was either Conor's first or second fight in the UFC.
It was his second fight in the UFC. His first fight was Marcus Brimage. I mean, it was only his second fight. He was just getting warmed up to the better competition than what he had over in Europe. But now we're looking at. I don't think it makes a difference. This was back in 2013. This was a different Max Holloway. The Conor McGregor who knocked out Jose Aldo is a different Conor McGregor. He's sharper, he's faster, he's more precise. This is a different Max Holloway as well. He's had a lot of time to grow.
You mentioned Max Holloway's 10-fight winning streak. He's also fought a lot of different guys during that winning streak, and I think that the win over Anthony Pettis says a lot because you're beating a former UFC champion, you're beating a guy who has a similar fighting style to you, and you're doing it in a pretty uncomfortable situation because Pettis missed weight. So I think there was all these things that kind of like were check marks for Holloway to get out of that fight that I think is actually putting him in a position to be even more ready for this fight with Aldo.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Pettis is obviously a very dynamic striker, and he's very creative as well. Would I like to run that after a couple of wins by Pettis? Would I like to see that fight ran back? I would like to see that fight ran back, but Anthony Pettis is taken back off to the 155-pound division. I think he admitted that the weight cut was just drawing him out a little too much. He didn't feel as energetic as he did. It's the same thing that Dustin Poirier did. There's no shame in that. Some people are built for that division. Some people aren't. I think Pettis thought with the new breed of wrestlers that was taking over the lightweight division, that I think he thought maybe the grass just might be a little greener down in the featherweight division, and he paid a price for it. So he's gonna, he faced a Max Holloway with this winning streak that Holloway's on right now. First of all, the way you finish fights. He's got technical knockouts and submissions, and through most of those fights, that is, and as long of a streak as he's on, that's a huge confidence booster. I mean, hey, damn near arrogant, but it's not going to be arrogant. He's going to respect Max Holloway's going to respect Jose Aldo when he steps in the cage, and then he's going to analyze however he sees the fight. He's going to take advantage of whatever openings, but we're also, if the same Jose Aldo shows up that fought Frankie Edgar back at UFC 200, it's going to be, that run for Max Holloway could very much come to an end.
All right, let's run some quick picks down for this fight before we get to some of the recent UFC MMA news. So your pick for Aldo versus Holloway, I'm actually going to go with the underdog and go for Holloway because I think that he presents a style matchup that is going to be unfamiliar for Aldo.
I'm going to have to go with Jose Aldo. 28 fights into his career, I don't think there's a matchup he's never seen. I don't think there's a matchup that he's unprepared for. I mean, you think about the wrestlers, the jiu-jitsu guys, the strikers that he's fought. I mean, there's nothing or nobody he hasn't fought or hasn't seen. I'm going to go with Jose Aldo. And I'm gonna. It's most likely going to be a decision. He's not going to finish Max Holloway.
Also, Claudia Gadelha versus Carolina Kowalski. I mean, I always mess up her name. You know that. I like Carolina
Kowalkiewicz.
Yeah. Listen, I spent so much time learning Joanna's name that I forgot about the other Polish girl. So.
It took me a minute too. Yeah, Claudia Gadelha and Karolina Kowalkiewicz is. That's throw the names into the hat and just pick one. The only thing that I think that gives Claudia Gadelha the edge is that she switched camps from Novo União, which is Jose Aldo's camp, which did very well for her, but she moved to Greg Jackson's camp. And Greg Jackson was nicknamed Genghis by Mask from Tap Out. If you guys remember Charles Lewis, rest in peace.
Yep.
he was called Genghis for a reason. It was his name. It was his genius nickname for Greg Jackson. Switching over to Jackson Winklejohn is really going to make a difference. And she even said in an interview earlier this week on a podcast that she even feels like a different athlete being there. She said she feels like her cardio is even up, which is something everybody was kind of ragging on her for. So if she can keep Karolina Kowalkiewicz down and implement her will that way, I mean, we could be looking at another long decision fight.
I'm going with Claudia in this fight. I just think her skill set is just a bad matchup for Carolina. Vitor Belfort versus Nate Marquardt. I'm going Belfort just because it's in Brazil. I'm really not going deep analysis into this. I just think Belfort in Brazil is a factor, and I think Marquardt is so far past his prime that I think anything that touches his chin is probably going to put him down.
Yeah, it's the same thing, and it's like I said, these two should be in. Vitor Belfort has a great idea. Let's do a Legends promotion, and I really like that idea. A rival promotion to the UFC, Bellator, has stuck Legends in the cage, and it has shown to work. I think Belfort is onto something. How about we just do a Legends promotion just for the Legends? And I like that. And he should do that. I think he should get out of fighting altogether. I don't think mentally he's here. With Belfort, it's the same thing as it's the same thing I always say about him. You just don't know which Belfort is going to show up. But also, if you can survive a round one onslaught from Vitor Belfort, you're most likely going to win the fight because that's usually when his will is broken. If he can't knock you out in the first round and Marquardt can keep him to the ground, Marquardt could win this fight. And it's not a viable. It's not impossible for Marquardt to win this fight. He can with his ground game. He does have a nice overhand right, but mostly his jiu-jitsu and everything else. So he takes him to the mat. He could probably pound out a victory.
We're talking with Dizz. You can follow him at Talk MMA on Twitter. Let's get a couple MMA UFC stories here. So George St. Pierre, you mentioned the last time I talked to you, he needs everything perfect for him to. I know, but the people want to know, man. The people want to know. You had said before that he needs everything to be perfect in order for him to fight, and it looks like there's a whole new mess of scenarios and situations. So, explain to the folks out there what is going on now with GSP.
I don't think GSP can explain what's going on with GSP. The guy is all over the place. He's fired up and ready to come back, and now suddenly he has an eye injury, or I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he stubbed his toe on the coffee table, or maybe woke up feeling dizzy, or who knows? George St. Pierre is kind of like a solar eclipse. I mean, he doesn't come around very often, but when he does, it's kind of special. So, I don't even think the UFC really knows what's going on with George St. Pierre. All we know is that he was ready to fight during that press conference with Michael Bisping a couple of months ago, and then, hey, Michael Bisping, just wanted to tell you that, I'm not going to be ready till after October, okay? What do they do with what in the world do they do with that Edmonton card now? Who do they put on that? Their next biggest Canadian hero is in another promotion now. And now they have George St. Pierre, who is just kind of, he's kind of dangling the carrot in front of the mule right now. He's just like, come and get me. Do you put him in with Woodley? Do you piss off, Demian Maia? And if that fight is offered to Woodley, he's not going to fight Demian Maia. If there's if he thinks he's going to lose, which that's fine. That's to me, that's absolutely fine. If you don't feel confident that you're going to fight either fighter, you take the one that's going to pay you the most. I would take the George St. Pierre fight if I were Tyron Woodley. But now if I was an honorable human being, And listen, George, you've been sitting out for 3 years. This guy's actually next. If I was an honorable champion, I would absolutely say, hey, listen, Demian Maia worked really hard to get to this number one contender spot and even risked it with a dynamic striker like, George Masvidal. I'm going to have to give Demian Maia his shot. Why not go ahead and take the Demian Maia fight in maybe, let's say, 215, maybe, at UFC 215, or, and then, hey, listen, if you beat Demian Maia then, why not make a pull to headline the Madison Square Garden event November 4th? It works. He gets paid twice. Why not?
Dizz, we talked about McGregor earlier, and I really want to get into this, the whole McGregor-Floyd Mayweather situation. I talked to a lot of boxing fans in particular that kind of feel like that this is kind of a slap to the face for boxing. To be fair, I really want to get your thoughts on it. If this thing does happen, what is your view on this whole situation?
I think it's fun. I think it's expensive fun. I think that it's a why not? If you're Conor McGregor and you have, let's see, do I fight Nick Diaz again or somebody for $15 million, or do I go ahead and take the $100 million payday? I'm going to take the $100 million payday. This is we're at a whole new level of fighting now, where finances takes over everything. But until Floyd Mayweather signs on the dotted line, we already know that Conor McGregor has. I'm actually kind of sick of hearing about it. It is a black eye. This is win-win for Conor McGregor. This is win-win for Conor McGregor. If he wins, he knocked out arguably one of the greatest defensive boxers of all time in Floyd Mayweather. If he loses, well, he should have never won that fight anyways. And then he walks away with $100 million. This is a black eye on boxing, even if Conor McGregor makes it past round 4. You're talking about a guy who went 49-0 in his entire career against a guy making his boxing debut. Well, has that ever been heard of? Has that ever happened?
No, I agree.
I mean, have we ever seen that ever? No, but I bet you that they could probably put $100 price tag on the pay-per-view buy, and I bet people will still buy it.
He is Dizz from @TalkMMA. You can follow him on Twitter. He breaks all the MMA and UFC news before the mainstream media gets their hands on it. Sometimes they steal from him too. But either way, Dizz, we appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, Dizz.
Hey, you're welcome. You guys have a good one. Enjoy the show tonight if you buy it.